An appeal to broader civil society, different formations in our civil society, SANCO in particular, as the leading formation when it comes to broader civil society, and different other formations from, civil society leadership, that whilst we understand their dissatisfaction, we understand their plight about service delivery issues, and in the main, the issues that they are concerned about are indeed legitimate, and some of them should have been dealt with long ago. We want to make a special plea to the South African nation, to the South African public, to our communities, to broader civil society, to allow our young people to have access to exam centers to go and write their examinations, because they've been preparing for this for 12 to 13 years. Just imagine, the trauma that brings to these young people. They've already gone through COVID, which had its own trauma for the past 2 years, ESCOM load shedding, which had its own trauma on them. Now, at the moment of going to write the exams, being denied that opportunity to write their exams. So we want to make a special plea once more to the South African public to help us to protect the exams, to help us to ensure that our young people do not miss this opportunity that they most deserve and desperately need to sit for their final year exams. So we've also picked up that there are some parents and some schools that denied learners from writing exams because some of them felt pregnant and some of them had not paid school fee. Again, this is unlawful. Our policies are very clear on these matters. The issue of school fees should be dealt with by parents or guardian. No learner should be prevented from writing exams because of having not paid school fees, or maybe the school fees are not paid. So we really want to appeal to parents, to appeal to school principals, to appeal to community members that they should please report to us of any incident of this nature, so that our intervention is timely to secure the opportunity for these young people to write exams. The last point that I want to touch is that parents, communities, and all schools are requested to make alternative arrangements for learners to stay close to the schools where they are writing exams, so that they are not locked out because of overnight rain or flooding. The rains that we experience of now late are irregular, are unprecedented. So we want to make a special plea to parents, to communities, to school principals and teachers to work together to make alternative arrangements for learners to have accommodation close to the school where they'll be writing exams, so that if you experience overnight heavy rains and flooding, they are not locked out of the examination center. Once more, we want to thank our nation and our public, and thank our teachers, school principals, our officials, particularly exam officials, who've been spending sleepless nights to make sure that our exams proceed unhindered. And I must say, we are concerned about the planned public service strike, but we have worked with provinces on a contingency plan. to make sure that when the public service strike happens, the exams should still proceed unhindered. I am now going to invite Dr. Rufus Polia to come and take us through the technical report and just share with the nation on the week that was and the week lying ahead. Dr. Polia.
Thank you, DG, and good morning to the South African nation. Good morning to all our media colleagues present this morning. And let me also reiterate the appreciation of our Director General, firstly to our parents, our learners, and all key stakeholders that continue to support us in the implementation of this very large enterprise, the 2022 National Senior Certificate Examination. Let me also express my appreciation to our media colleagues for your support, not just in the writing of the exam, but throughout the year in terms of our preparation and getting us to this point. My purpose this morning, as outlined by the DG, is to provide you a more detailed account of how the administration of the examination has proceeded over the last few days. And this would be the outline of my presentation. But let me just say that this examination commenced on the 25th of October, and we've now gone through 7 days of a 30-day examination period. And just to highlight once again, this is possibly one of the largest examinations being administered by the Department of Basic Education. We have a total of 921,879 candidates writing this examination. And this examination, like all other examinations, comprises of part-time and full-time candidates. We have 753,964 full-time candidates and 167,915 part-time candidates. Now, in terms of the examination, we track this examination not just on a question paper by question paper basis in terms of as it is written, but we track it on an hourly basis. And just to give you a more detailed account, 71 of the 220 question papers have been written. When I talk about 220 question papers, I'm talking about the sum total of all the examination question papers that will be written by all candidates who take subjects in different combinations. So we have completed 32% of the examination. Now, it may appear as if in the first 7 days we have completed 1/3 of the exam, and the only reason that we have gone through such a large percentage in the first week is that we have a number of non-official languages, and these are taken by learners who want to take a non-official language, and these in the main would be of foreign languages. And we have paper 1, paper 2, and paper 3. So most of these are complete, and that constitutes almost 60 of the 71 papers that have been written already. Now, as pointed out by our Director General, that the exams are moving extremely well, except for load shedding, which we spoke about extensively in our last media briefing. But I think the main concern at the moment, as our DG has highlighted, is protest action. And I cannot emphasize the negativity that is associated with any protest action. Learners that have gone through 13 years of learning, waiting anxiously, having prepared thoroughly to write an exam, and then to be faced with the anxiety and tension on the morning of an examination, that you may not be able to write the exam simply because of an activity and action instigated by members of the community in which our learners are located. And I must say that for possibly each of the last 5 days, we've had protest action in at least one of the provinces. Northwest, Northern Cape, Gauteng have, to some large extent, we've had these protest actions occurring. Now, in terms of storms and storm damage, we've been looking very closely at KZN and Eastern Cape. From previous practice, these are our two provinces where flooding normally occurs. But given the change in our weather patterns, we've had storm damage, in fact, in the Northern Cape, and we had storms in the Northwest Province. And I'll tell you a little more about that. Now, in an examination of this magnitude, what is critical is to monitor and report. As indicated, our exam is written across almost more than 7,000 examination centers, and we need to collect information from each of these centers on a daily basis to know exactly what is happening in each of these centers. We have daily reporting moving from our schools, exam centers, where the exam is being written, to our district offices, where it gets consolidated, and from that point, it gets to the 9 provincial offices, where it gets further consolidated and then reported to the national department. Now, we have set a minimum threshold of at least 70% of our exam centers must be monitored on a daily basis. And our provincial departments have pulled out all stops to make sure that they utilize subject advisors, district officials, provincial officials to monitor every examination to make sure that every examination follows the prescribed protocol. Exam credibility is of paramount importance. I cannot emphasize the effort, the energy that goes into making sure that all our exams are credible, because that determines the currency, that determines the integrity of our examinations. DBE, through the efforts of our Director General, have deployed 85 monitors. And this is besides the monitoring that is initiated by our provincial departments. And I must say that our provincial departments have resorted to electronic modes and modalities of monitoring. So online reporting helps us to have real-time information in terms of what's happening across all centers where exams are written. We have WhatsApp chat groups, so this allows for regular exchange of information. The group that manages exam across the 9 provinces, together with the DBE, constitutes our exam top management, and we meet regularly. The Director General has indicated already, has met with the heads of department on Friday, and he'll continue to meet with them so that we exchange information and identify areas that we need to give attention to. The Director General also had a meeting with our teacher union leadership, our school governing body associations, and professional bodies. So you will get a sense that running an exam requires all hands on deck. And I must say we have the support of all our key role players and stakeholders. Now, looking at what has transpired in this week that has gone past. This is week 2. Week 1 was when we wrote computer applications technology and information technology. And these are the question papers that have been written already. And some of our major papers have been written in terms of English and Afrikaans, economics, history. Mathematics paper 1 was written. And I must say that we've had positive responses coming from our schools, coming from our key institutions regarding mathematics paper 1. And and mathematics paper 2 will be written tomorrow. Now, here is the detail, and we provided you with some of these details regarding computer applications technology. And remember, our biggest concern with computer applications technology was the issue of load shedding. And I must say there was a lot of anxiety on the eve of the writing of computer applications technology. We were on stage 4 load shedding, and computer applications technology requires electricity. That then dropped to stage 3 load shedding. But I must say that the exam proceeded reasonably well, and that's the breakdown of all the centers where there were problems. But I must say that all our learners were able to write the examination, and here I provide you with a summary of the number of centers that were affected by load shedding. Now, affected does not mean they did not write. It simply means they had to start early or they started late, which also is certainly not the best condition, because they should start at the time that it has been scheduled. So 119 centers were affected by load shedding, and 3 centers were affected by technical issues. And when I say technical issues, it simply means there may have been a problem with the computers that were used. There may have been a problem during the saving of the data. So those are technical and not related to the load shedding. In the case of IT, which is information technology, we had 2 centers that were affected by load shedding, but here again, all learners were able to write the exam. In total, the number of learners that were impacted in some way by load shedding was 3,956. But as we mentioned last week, there are only 14 learners coming from computer applications technology that will have to rewrite the paper. And that was because of load shedding when they switched to the generator that resulted in a power surge, and that damaged the computers that they were using. So these are the 14 that will rewrite. Now, what I will now do very quickly is to give you a day-by-day account in terms of what transpired. On Monday, as our DG mentioned, we had English Home Language, English First Additional Language, and English Second Additional Language, which is taken by almost 90% of our learners. And we had a reasonably good run, but the following issues were reported. And the first incident is unfortunate, which our DG has alluded to. One of our candidates who was pregnant was not allowed to write English file, paper 1, and this is certainly against our policy. And I'm hoping that this message will get across to all our parents, to all our school principals. Do not disallow learners simply because they may be pregnant. Our policies are absolutely clear on this matter. Now, very interesting that our examinations will accommodate learners wherever they are based on the validity of the reason. And we had candidates from KZN, Mpumalanga, and Northern Cape that wrote the examination in hospitals. And this would imply that either the morning or the night before, learners would have taken ill and had to be admitted to hospital, and our exam systems in the province would have kicked in, created a secure and a conducive environment in the hospital for our candidates to write. So we have a very adaptable and versatile system, and it also indicates to the fact that we are going the extra mile to make sure that every learner is given an opportunity to write the exam. But item C is certainly the unfortunate one, and that's possibly the main reason for our technical briefing this morning. In the Impindle area in Umgungundlovu district, there was a community protest, and the South African police services had to be called in to escort our officials to school, to get the question papers to the school, and we are appreciative for the support from the South African Police services that have allowed us to administer the examination in these schools in this particular area. But here again, I think we need to try and place ourselves in the predicament of these learners, not knowing whether you're going to be able to write this exam or not. And I think this is the point that we want to stress to our communities. Do not use our learners to achieve your own objectives. Candidates writing at the wrong level, this always happens simply because you have English offered at home language, first additional and second additional language, and despite the fact that we emphasize to learners that they must make sure that the paper they receive is at the right level, some of our learners, and I assume it's the stress of the examination, that they will go ahead and write a paper at the wrong level. But I can just assure our candidates out there that may have committed such an error that we do have a dispensation in conjunction with the Quality Assurance Council to accommodate learners that may have written a paper on the wrong level. On Tuesday, economics, another very important paper, was written. And here again, in Northwest, in one of our districts, we had service delivery protest. Now look at the number of learners that were affected. 459 candidates thrown into quandary on the morning that they are writing the examination. But here again, through the intervention of the district and our SAPS, the learners were able to write, but they started late. And whenever learners start late, we compensate them for the lost time. There was also the unfortunate incident which our Director General has mentioned in Pandamfundo Secondary in the Etwatwa area in Gauteng, where 53 of our candidates, now this is highly, highly unfortunate, 53 of the candidates could not write the examination. Now, can you imagine these 53 candidates being not being given the opportunity of writing an examination that they have prepared for? But nonetheless, we are looking into this situation, and we would see how best these learners could be accommodated. We also had candidates admitted to hospital in the Northern Cape. And in the Northern Cape, we also had one candidate who broke his arm. And here again, our exam processes kicked in, and we were able to very quickly appoint a scribe. And a scribe is simply somebody that writes on behalf of the learner. So the learner reads, and the learner then orally communicates the answer to the scribe, and the scribe will then write the answer. So these are some of the accommodation options that we have to cater for our learners. In an examination of this magnitude, one expects that learners will take their chances and walk into the exam room with crib notes, some of them even with cell phones. Now, cell phone technology is used as a source of information. And I want to reiterate, and I'm hoping that our parents out there and our learners out there, please do not expose yourself to the risk of walking into an exam room with your cell phone. The mere fact that you are in possession of a cell phone is regarded as a major breach of security, and unfortunately, you will have to face the penalty. So parents, please warn your sons and daughters that are writing the examination tomorrow. And I'm appealing to learners. Sometimes you just walk into the exam room not realizing that you may have the cell phone in your pocket. Our invigilators are absolutely emphatic. They will reiterate these instructions at every examination session so that learners do not unintentionally walk into the exam room with their cell phones. In the case of Afrikaans, we wrote Afrikaans paper 1. on Wednesday. And here again, Afrikaans is offered at 3 levels: home language, first additional, and second additional. And here again, the exam proceeded without any serious incident. But here again, we were presented with Vosloorus this time in Gauteng with service delivery protest. And again, all candidates were able to write. And you see, the point that we want to stress is that the anxiety, the unsettlement faced by these candidates can in no way be measured or evaluated. And because it cannot be measured in terms of the trauma, it cannot be compensated. So as much as we may say learners have written the examination, but the social derailment to the learner is what the learner cannot be in any way compensated. We also had a candidate found in possession of cell phone and crib notes. Now, remember, in an exam of this magnitude, if you have the odd cell phone crib notes, it's expected. And what I can say is that when these irregularities, as we call them, are detected, it confirms that we have a vigilant system. It confirms that our invigilators are looking closely at our learners as they write the exam. And therefore, again, I'm sounding a word of caution to our learners. Our invigilators will be observing you every moment. So don't be found wanting. There was also an unfortunate incident of special answer books in the case of German, which should have been used in the examination. And this is a fault on our part, and we take responsibility for that. But the learners were able to write the examination on a normal answer book. We will look at these 83 candidates and make sure that by virtue of the fact that they did not have the correct answer book, they were not disadvantaged. And if they were disadvantaged, we have mechanisms to compensate them. And we will make sure that these kinds of errors do not occur. And then on Thursday, history, another very important paper. And here we had crib notes, and crib notes again in the provinces that are listed there. And again, we had heavy rains in the Northern Cape. In fact, it contributed to a damage of the school, but nonetheless, the examination proceeded. I think when it comes to, nature, I mean, that's certainly beyond our control, and that we can, not be disappointed about, to the degree that we're disappointed about community protests that are instigated by our very own. In the Western Cape, one candidate arrived an hour late. Now, we have a clear ruling that if you arrive an hour late, and the reason I'm emphasizing this is that I'm hoping that our learners out there and our parents are listening, is that if you arrive an hour late, you will not be allowed to enter the exam room, neither will you be allowed to write the exam. Simply because when a learner enters the exam room, learners can leave after the first hour. So one then assumes that if you come in after an hour, you could have had contact with learners that would have left the exam room, and that constitutes a compromise. Again, we had one case of possession of cell phone. Engineering, graphics, and design, another important subject, was written on Thursday afternoon. Exam proceeded well, except for crib notes and cell phones in the Eastern Cape. And then came the all-important subject on Friday morning, mathematics, mathematical literacy, and technical maths. Here again, candidates were found in possession of crib notes and cell phones. And C is again extremely unfortunate. And this is the point we want to emphasize. A principal did not allow one of the learners coming from an independent school to write the examination in the Free State simply because of non-payment of school fees. We want to stress this point. Payment of school fees is an issue between the parent and the school. No learner should be prevented from writing an examination because of the non-payment of school fees. And let me say that as a department, action will be taken against that particular school with regard to their action of preventing a learner from writing the examination. We had flooding in Northwest in the Kuma informal settlement, and here again our support systems kicked in and all candidates were able to write the examination. 3 candidates unfortunately took ill during the writing of the exam. Now, if you take ill during the writing of the exam and you cannot finish the paper, there's unfortunately nothing we can do. The only dispensation available is for the candidates to go with the rewrite opportunity in June. Again, we had candidates writing in hospital in the Northern Cape. G is also another unfortunate incident. While the exam was in progress in the Northern Cape, we had over 180 parents storming the school simply because they wanted a particular learner suspended. And obviously that created pandemonium in the school, and our poor learners that were writing would have been traumatized, but together with the district and the senior management team at the school, order was restored and the exam proceeded normally. Now, in an examination of this nature, we also have legal matters. I mean, the South African public is fully aware of their rights, and we had one incident, and in this case, one school in the Western Cape, an independent school, was found to have violated our protocols in the writing of the examination. We then withdrew the facility in terms of them having to administer the exam. And that's how serious we are about the adherence to our protocols. And this is a warning to all schools. If you do not follow the protocols, you will then lose the opportunity of administering the exam. So what we then do, we always make sure that our learners are accommodated. And the learners were then moved to a neighboring school. The owner of the school then approached the court. But we then managed to settle this matter. And there's been an interim agreement that we've concluded with the school where we will allow them to write the examination, but on strict terms, where the provincial department will appoint invigilators. We'll have a monitor on site for every examination. Question papers will not be stored, but will be delivered to this particular school. And the principal will continue to serve as an invigilator, but under the direct eye of an appointed invigilator. So that was week 2 of the examination. And again, from my account, you would have realized that the exam has gone reasonably well. Looking at over 800,000 candidates writing across all of these centers, and if you look at the number of invigilators and officials, and the fact that some of our officials have to get up as early as 3 o'clock in the morning to get question papers to schools on time. So it's a mammoth operation. So the fact that 7 days have gone well is a credit. But I want to hasten to say that it's still early days. We still have 23 days to go. And we are still doing the best we can to make sure that week 3 goes well. And tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, Maths Paper 2, Maths Literacy Paper 2, and Technical Maths Paper 2 will be written. And this is an important examination. Not that other question papers are not important. We have History Paper 2, Economics Paper 2, African Languages, a number of them that are written, Computer Applications Technology, Information Technology, Paper 2. So that will complete our CAT and IT, Religion Studies, Paper 1, Marine Sciences, Paper 1, Physical Science, Paper 1, and Technical Sciences will be written on Friday. I just thought I will give you a quick snapshot of what is happening on the other front while the writing is taking place. Now remember, this is a sequential process. And in order for us to ensure that on the 20th of January, all learners get their results, we have a very tight schedule in terms of activities that must be run in accordance with the plan. So we've had CAT and IT being written, and now starts what we call the marking standardization meetings. The marking standardization meetings were previously referred to as memo discussions, where you discuss the marking guideline. Now, what is very important about this process is that we allow our chief markers and internal moderators from the province to get live scripts that have been written, to pre-mark them, and to see how learners are performing. What are the kind of responses? So at this meeting, and we have 160 of these meetings which are being convened from these very offices here at the Department of Basic Education. We're following a hybrid model this year, which simply means that our provincial officials will connect virtually, but our DBE officials, our exam panels, together with the Umalusi moderators, will be based here in Pretoria. And what happens is that there's a robust debate and discussion on what are the possible answers to every question. This also gives all our chief examiners or our chief markers and moderators to interrogate the question, because the validity, the interpretation of a question can only be fully understood after it's written and after you see how learners respond. So I want to assure our learners and our parents out there that this particular process will ensure that where there may have been an interpretation that may be different, your son or daughter will be accommodated. So the marking guideline accommodates various responses coming from various experts. But this is done under the watchful eye of the Quality Assurance Council, Umalusi, who will finally approve that an alternative option is in fact correct, and we're not just boosting the guideline, just for the purpose of doing such an exercise. Associated with this exercise comes a training of our chief markers and internal moderators. So day 1, finalization of the marking guideline. Day 2, these chief markers and internal moderators, they go through a rigorous process of training. And we train them on live scripts, and we look at how do they mark, what are the deviations, are they able to comply with the tolerance range. And only if these chief markers and internal moderators can comply with the strict tolerances that we provide will they be authorized. So authorization, in fact, certifies these chief markers and internal moderators to go and run this exercise of marking in the province. So this is how we ensure quality in the marking process. Now, these are the meetings that are taking place at the moment. English Home Language, FAL and SAL is currently taking place. CAT and IT just completed over the weekend, and during the course of the week we will be then interrogating the marking guidelines for those subjects listed, and the last meeting will take place on the 10th of December so that our marking can start. So this takes me to the conclusion, and in summary I want to say the examination is proceeding well, and as a nation let us hold on firmly to a credible and an examination of integrity. We need the support of all parents, all learners, all teachers, all officials. The entire South African public is required in making sure that we maintain this credibility, which is so important. Let's continue to ensure that our learners write under the most conducive environment. Let us not derail our learners in any way. We are dealing with the inclement weather, and we are in touch with the South African Weather Services that will be assisting us with up-to-date weather forecasts so that we can prepare if there's anything untoward. I must say that we have excellent support from our NATJOC, which is the National Joint Operations Committee, and the Provincial Joint Operation Committee, and we're able to draw on their services at short notice to assist us, particularly with protest actions and with issues of inclement weather. My final appeal to all our learners: do not waste your time trying to elicit information relating to the question paper to be written. You are just wasting valuable time. Use the limited time that you have available to preparing for the examination rather than trying to locate that question paper. And the penalties, if you are caught in possession of an examination question paper, are too ghastly to contemplate. It's going to ruin your entire future as a student. So do not even attempt to venture into that direction. To our parents and members of the public, we are dependent on you to be our eyes and ears wherever you are. If you have any information that may appear suspicious, remember our hotline number, 069-335-2818. It's a 24/7 hotline number, and you can call us at any time, and we promise we will respond. In conclusion, our sincere appreciation to our parents, teacher unions, teachers, officials, school governing bodies, professional bodies, and all other partners for their support in bringing us this point to the 2022 October-November examinations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, DG. Thank you so much, Dr. Polia, the Chief Director for Examination.
Okay, we come out of that press briefing there. That was, of course, Rufus Polia, who is the Chief Director of National Assessment and Public Examination at the Department of Education, just taking us through and giving us an overview of the week that was of the matric matric class of 2022, starting with their exams this past week. And of course, just going back to those reports that were received by the department around some of the challenges that they faced when administering those examinations throughout the course of last week. And he also went on to say that exam credibility is what determines the...
Do you come back to write next year? Does the timetable allow for a rewrite now or not? Please maybe talk to that in addition to the questions that will come from the floor. I'm already seeing one from Ahmed, and two from Logo will come to you. Ahmed, you can go first.
Hi there, it's Ahmed Kazi from Vision Africa. Will there be any recourse, any consequences for schools which did not allow any of the learners to write due to outstanding pleas? And obviously the one matriculated in spring.
All right, thank you for that.
All right, my Mulukumlot from ENCA. I think my question was also related to that, but I want to take it forward and say, I don't think there's anyone who can blame you for the weather conditions, the storms and all that. Those are natural matters. But the fact that you still have officials, be it principals or whomever within the education system, who's going to turn a pregnant learner or a learner with an outstanding school fees, surely that reflects negatively on your part. Why do we still have such people? But also because you tend to punish the learners who might be, if there's a question paper that leaked. What punishment usually is meted on such officials if you're saying that your policy is clear? Why are they missing that point? Another question relates to the 53 learners in Etwatwa who could not ride. I'm not too sure, I might have missed that. Are they going to ride during this process now, or they will have to wait for June for them to write that particular exam paper? But let's now talk about, because the DG was saying that the examination so far has gone exceptionally well. but the good doctor is saying relatively well. What do we take here out of this? Sure.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. There's another question on WhatsApp as to what will be done to those parents that are found to have, especially in the cases where they've stormed a school or a center, demanding that another learner. Will cases be opened? That's an additional question I received on WhatsApp. So I'm going to ask DG to come first. Oh, there's another one at the back. Yeah, I'm the board.
Yeah.
But please proceed and introduce yourself first.
Koskona Duma from Eyewitness News. I just have a question about the pupils that were affected by the service delivery process, and then the results of that being they have to write the exams later than initially scheduled. In terms of managing the credibility of this, how do you make sure that those learners who wrote first did not subsequently then transfer the information to the pupils who had to start their exams later?
All right. Thank you for that question. Should I ask the DG first to start, and then Dr. Pola will come after that? Thank you.
Thank you very much to all the comments and questions. But also I want to convey my appreciation and thanks to Dr. Polia for a very comprehensive presentation and the passion with which she delivered this presentation. The first question that I'm going to comment on is the last one, the issue of learners starting early and sometimes starting late, and the credibility of the examinations. What usually happens is that if learners are starting early, they would start probably an hour before the exam. They would start an hour before the actual starting time, and then gauging the time at which load shedding would begin. If load shedding is going to start at 10 or 11, if it's a 1.5 hour or 2 hour paper, you allow them to start at 8 o'clock, so that when load shedding begins, at least it would be the time that they would have finished their exam. Those that are starting later, unfortunately, you'll then have to keep them for that duration when other learners would have started the exam, to keep them in the exam room until that time when they'll be starting to write the exams, and they would probably finish an hour or two after that. They stay longer in the exam room to ensure that they don't interact with anyone who would have written before. That's how it's managed. And Dr. Polia received daily reports, which they communicate to me, about each and every center. Incidents of this nature are also reported as technical irregularities. They are irregularities, but they are technical irregularities. So we account on each one of them, so that when you also mark, you mark with that in mind, that these learners had a different dispensation of writing. Is there anything that is untoward in their scripts that might suggest something, although measures were put in place to secure the integrity of the exams? So that's what we do. The relativity of how well the exam has gone. Well, I suppose it depends on the standard that you are looking at. The closer you are to the standard, the stricter you become. I mean, even in terms of judgment in law, your knowledge to an area of a discipline is accounted higher to somebody who's a generalist to that. Dr. Polia is closer to the exams, he says relatively well. From where I am, exams have gone exceptionally well. Exams of this magnitude you can check even in different countries. The incidents that have been reported here are deemed to be normal. And we report on them. We even put them out to the public and the nation. In universities, you get them. Nobody would report on them. We are the only ones who would even share them with the nation. In many countries and even institutions in South Africa, they wouldn't even, they are non-events, in other words. They are non-events. And that's why I would refer to the exam having gone exceptionally well, despite all of these things. The 53 learners who couldn't write in Itwatwa, well, the policy would cover them. First, if it's about a paper that has more than 2 papers, you can accommodate them and result them out of the 2 papers that they would write. There could be also a consideration, this number might warrant that they be given a paper to write. And that discussion would happen between the exams, the province, the district, and the school that is affected. It's 53, it's not a small number. So you could consider giving them another opportunity. They write the same paper, but a different paper. We've got different reserved papers for each of the papers. If it's English paper 1, they would write one of the reserved papers. Because the paper written, it's already out. You can't get them to write that. They would write one of the reserved papers. So that discussion is ongoing between Dr. Polia, Gauteng province, and the district and the school of the affected learners. Learners who were not allowed, we are to blame for principals who have caused this. Well, except for the private school, for the public school where 2 learners merely were not allowed to write, but eventually they were allowed in KZN, the principal was embarrassed. A parent who happens to be a member of the SGB had withdrawn her child from the school and saying that the child is not going to write exams. And I said to the head of the department of KZN, they must pursue both cases. Those learners must be afforded the opportunity to write. They must go and tell parents that it's unlawful for them to prevent learners from writing exams. In the instance of the private school, we are going to follow up the matter of the learner who was not allowed to write because of the non-payment of school fees. And consequences will definitely ensue. And such consequences, I don't want to elaborate on them, but they might be severe for anyone who engages on an unlawful act such as this one, which has just ghastly repercussions for learners. So, Dr. Polia, I've really tried to respond and comment, but I think you must come. You've got 34 years in exams, almost the number of years of my entire career in education, so you have to come and say something.
Thank you, DG. Our DG has covered all the higher grade questions, and I will deal with the lower grade questions. So thank you, DG. No, you've done a great job in terms of dealing with examination-related matters. And let me just deal possibly with that question regarding the one raised by Mr. Mslanga, is that if a learner writes the entire examination but misses one paper. Now, we will look at this on a case-by-case basis, and if there are strong grounds for such a learner to be resulted, in conjunction with the Quality Assurance Council, we will then result the learner, and we have a mechanism to deal with that paper that has been missed, because we found that there are learners, particularly where you have 3 papers and 2 papers. A learner may miss 1 paper, but could still pass the examination based on the papers that he has written. Also, if one looks at the attainment of a qualification, a learner needs to pass 6 of the 7 subjects. So the agreement by HEDCOM, and we're taking this matter to the Council of Education Ministers on Friday, is to argue the case that if a learner has missed 1 paper, let's allow them to be resulted instead of them having to wait until June to get their complete result. And we're confident that our Council of Education Ministers will look at this request positively, and then we'll be able to communicate this to our parents and learners. So I think to our learners out there, if you've already missed the first paper in either English or Afrikaans, our advice to you is go back and write the paper 2 and the paper 3. The same, if you've missed maths paper 1, go back and write the paper 2 and give it your best shot. There is a dispensation that could allow for you to be resulted. The question raised about why do officials miss the point? And a short answer will be simply because we are human. I think if we have robots running our exam, then it would be run in a robotic manner with no emissions. But humans are humans, and I'm not saying that, lightly, but let me just give you a sense of the extent to which we go to kind of enforce the need for adherence to rules and regulation. Every invigilator, every chief invigilator, every monitor, nobody is allowed to enter an exam room if you have not been thoroughly trained with regard to the protocols. And even if you were a principal for the last 20 odd years, you must still attend a training session on an annual basis where these procedures are repeated. But unfortunately, humans are humans. And why they do not comply, I think I'm still not fully conversant with that kind of behavior. But we will take action against those that do not comply. And let me just indicate that we are not just hard with candidates if they are found to have breached the rules. We are equally hard with our educators. And let me clearly say that the Employment of Educators Act is clear that if an educator is involved in an examination violation, it's a dismissible offense. So examination is a priority in the South African system. So obviously, we follow the normal procedure of giving everyone the right to respond, and we don't just take action against educators if they are involved in any serious violations. With regard to rewrite, if I understood the question properly, I think our DG covered the one component. But whenever you have a rewrite examination, it simply means it has to be a new question paper. So if there is a decision by Umalusi and our DG, together with the provincial departments, that the 53 candidates must be given an opportunity, then it has to be a completely new question paper that these learners will have to write. I think, DG, we've covered all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Polia. I just wanted to report some irregularities, that there are some people who are unmuting and talking while you are also talking. So I forgot to request those that are joining us via Teams to stay muted. because we can hear you. And the good thing with Teams is that we can see who you are, so we can call you out. But we won't do that. Instead, we'll go back to round 2 of our questions. I've already seen one new hand and a follow-up. So we'll start with a new one.
Nontolo Sbia from the Sowetan newspaper. I just wanted to find out what has since happened with the one pregnant learner who was not given an opportunity to write. Will she be writing? Has she been given an opportunity to write again?
Okay, thank you.
All right. I think, yes, the question with regard to the 53 learners in Etwatwa has been responded to, but part of it was not responded to. And the question was, when are they going to write? Because they never wrote that paper anyway. Is it now, or they will have to wait for June? But another question relates to when you say that this is a dismissible offense for these officials who, let's be honest, they are destroying the future of these learners. Do you have, because my assumption is that this is not happening for the first time. I may not have my facts in order, but I am willing to bet my 2 cents that it possibly happened. Do you have instances when you really fired officials who prevented learners from writing primarily on these 2 bases? They are pregnant or they did not pay school fees. Maybe let me add another element to say, previously during our days, pregnant female learners would be kicked out of school even before exam time. How do you deal with? Do we have cases where you can say, indeed, we fired an official who did that, if indeed it's a dismissible offense?
All right. Thank you for that. I think it's those 2 questions. DG, I think you must take them. And then Dr. Pula could come back again just to close on those matters. I think they are quite broad. DG will deal with them.
Thank you once more to the 2 colleagues for your questions and comments. And again, let me start with the last ones. Instances where officials were dismissed in engaging in unlawful activities or acts such as the ones that we've been talking about. I can't recall off my head of instances of this nature or similar instances, but maybe Dr. Polia might recall. But I do know that there are officials that action has been taken about who were involved in exam irregularities. But specific to this one, I'll leave it to Dr. Polia to give you details if there are. The 53 learners, we at the moment don't have the exact date as to when are they going to write. As I've said, it's an engagement that is happening between our exams, Gauteng exams, the district and the school. And once that has been concluded, they'll then indicate to us. Usually what happens if they are going to be given the opportunity to write, it happens within this exam period before the end of it. Usually towards the end of the exam so that you don't disrupt the schedule that is there already. If there's a space in between towards the end, you allow them the opportunity to write there. But Dr. Polia can also say something about it. The pregnant learner, my understanding is that the learner was allowed to write, Dr. Polia, in cases.
In the one case, the learner was not allowed.
Okay. Dr. Polia will explain that one. I thought it was the case that I was involved in KZN, where the principal agreed that he was going to work with the officials to ensure that the learner writes. But there is a case of a pregnant learner who was not allowed to write, and I would ask him to just give details in that regard.
Thank you, DG. Yeah, I think we had more than one case of a pregnant learner. And the one that DG is referring to, the learner wrote. But we have one learner in the Western Cape where the learner was not allowed to write. So what we are saying is we will investigate that case thoroughly. But in light of the dispensation that I spoke about earlier, this was English home language or FAL, I'm not absolutely certain. So if the learner missed one of the paper and the learner goes back and makes sure, and we will make sure that the learner writes paper 2 and paper 3, then we could then consider her to be resulted even though she would have written the entire exam but just missed this one paper. So we'll do the best we can to make sure that this particular learner is accommodated and not disadvantaged because of the action of the school. I think wherever there's a system error or the wrong decision, through our DG, we are able to accommodate these learners. And also let me qualify the issue of a dismissible offense. It must be a serious exam violation. And when we talk about serious exam violations, I'm talking about teachers implicated in leaked question papers, teachers implicated in compromising the examination. And we have had incidents, DG, a number of years ago, where teachers colluded with learners in getting them to copy, allowing learners to copy during the writing of the examination. Now, that is a serious offense, and serious action was taken. Whether they were dismissed, DG, I don't want to put my head on the block, but I know that action was taken against these teachers that were, in fact, responsible for orchestrating the group copying at these particular schools. The other thing that I want to just qualify is that when we say that learners qualify for a rewrite, it must be based on a valid reason. And that goes through a process, a committee that will look at the reasons, evaluate the reason, and then make a determination on whether the learners qualify for a rewrite. And DG, I think, is correct. In the case of the 53 learners, we will do the best we can to make sure that if there's agreement and a decision by Umalusi and the DG that these learners should rewrite, that it will be done before the exam concludes so that they receive their results with all the other learners on the 20th. I think that's it.
Okay, we've gone over an hour. The idea was to keep it within the hour, but we haven't done that badly. It's 12:15. Thank you so much for coming to the briefing and for covering it and your continued support. I can say, I can confidently say that this media briefing has gone relatively well, and there were no major incidents that are worth reporting on. We thank all our colleagues who joined via Teams. Also Facebook and YouTube were there. And thank you for the live broadcast. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much, DG, Dr. Paula, and Mr. Fisachi, and all colleagues in the room. We really appreciate it. It was relatively well. I'm close to the technical aspects, so the standard is very high. Quote unquote. Oh yeah, there's a request for you, 5:30 live ENCA.
With the DG?
With the DG. Oh? No, I was with him.
Okay. Yeah.
On this microphone.
Why don't they speak to the man who did it 4 years
National assessment and public.
Cool.
One boy.
Oh, great. Let me also leave as the host. As the host leave. Yeah, I think I need the guest. I'm going to check on my
No, they can join. That's for next week.
They're ready for next week. Oh, yeah. Did I take it?